If you guys will give me a moment here, I am going to share my screen and we're going to get going. Hopefully you have your workbook if you do. And again, we're going to start in the workbook on, looks like page 51. And again, really the subject of today, you guys, is about building wealth in what's called asset accumulation. I'll tell you a quick story as we kind of start the meeting. I had an appointment today, earlier this morning, with a 58-year-old gentleman who is obviously, like most 58-year-olds, concerned and thinking about retirement and savings and things like this. And all of his money and all of his savings are essentially in bank accounts, bank type of accounts. And so we're going to really talk why that could be a problem and why that may not be the right thing for most people. So again, we're going to get going, and I'm going to click through here and get past the sign in. And again, hopefully you're taking value from this. Again, I want to extend my personal invitation. If I can help you in any way with this material, or if you have questions, obviously get with the person that invited you, and we'll make sure to get you the answers and things you need. So let's go right to page 52. And this is what we're going to talk about. This is the goals of today's class. Number one, to leave with a better understanding of how to earn a reasonable rate of return on your resources. Basically, what that says is interest on your money. Rate of return and interest are the same thing. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about that. We got to earn interest on our money. We're also going to learn the effects of time, inflation, and taxes on your money's growth. If I can point out anything to pay attention to the tax man. The world is changing. The stimulus money, we're going to have to pay that back. So be prepared when taxes change. We are going to talk about that. We're also going to talk a little bit about what's called mutual funds, just some basic concepts. Most people have heard of mutual funds, and we find, not everybody really has an understanding of how they work. And so we're also going to talk about some differences in different ways to manage your money, what's called active and passive. Totally different strategies, accomplishing, kind of different things. And we're gonna talk about that. And we're also going to spend a few minutes talking about college and university. The need for college savings is, it's pretty big, and student loan is becoming a problem. And so this is really what we're going to talk about, a great source and subject for us to discuss. And so it's never too late to build wealth is the opening line here. It is never too late. It really depends on your mindset. And I really want us to focus on some simple things. And the first one is what's called the wealth formula. And I would like for you to picture maybe a different context if this was like a health workshop. And I said, hey guys, this is the health formula. I think many of us could kind of diagnose what that formula is. And we would say, you know what? Eat right, exercise, get enough sleep, drink enough water. Don't stress, don't smoke, don't do some of these things. Basically, do more of this and less of that. Eat less, move more. There's formulas. And again, it's easier said than done. And when we look at our money, there is a very similar formula called the wealth formula, okay? It starts with money. Doesn't matter the amount, money, plus time, plus or minus our rate of interest. We're going to talk about these. Minus what's called inflation, minus what's called taxes. The result here would be wealth. And so let's really think about it. It says it's a mathematical problem. If you can increase the positives and decrease the minuses, your money will grow. And so sometimes we don't know where to look. It's what's called a blind spot. For example, my friend this morning, his name is Gabriel, he's saving all his money in the bank. His blind spot on the wealth formula is this. The rate of return he's earning at the bank, hear me on this, you guys, the rate of interest at the bank is less than the rate of inflation. So again, the rate of interest is important. I hope we all understand what the word inflation means. It's the rising cost of living. And one of the things that I think we're going to witness is a thing called hyperinflation. And I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just telling you the reality of this. Here in a few months, when things are quote unquote back to normal and you want to maybe fly on an airline ticket, here's what you can expect. A 50% increase of what you would consider to be normal. And that will become the new normal. And it's pretty scary. The cost of these things that we're talking about. And so the last one here is taxes. So negative rate of return, inflation, these are enemies taxes is another enemy, and we are going to spend some time giving you some education on taxes. And so we've got to really understand it's a very simple formula that we do have some control over the outcome of how it works. If the minuses are bigger than the positives, you will lose. If inflation is 3% a year, but your savings are earning 1% a year, you're going to lose, my friend. And so again, it's something that we've got to be aware of. The cost of waiting, here in Tucson, Arizona, this is what we refer to as mañana syndrome. I don't mean that with any negative connotation, but I'll do it tomorrow. It's what's called the cost of waiting. And so here's an example, you guys. It says investing early versus waiting longer. Mr. Start Early invests $3,600, which if you do the math is about $10 a day, does that per year for 7 years at an 8% rate of interest in an account that is what's called tax deferred. Mr. Wait Longer saves the same amount of money for an additional 10 years, but he does it later. He starts it later. So we're going to really look at the difference of someone saving for more time but starting later. So Mr. Start Early does this. Let's say he's 25 years old and he puts away that $10 a day. And I say $10 a day because sometimes $3,600 can maybe intimidate some people. But here's the reality. If you're on the call, my gut is telling me you could probably save $10 a day if you really, really tried. If you really made an effort, you could probably do that. This individual does it at 25, and for whatever reason, at 31, they stop. They stop putting money in. They go, hey, you know what? I got to take a break. And if you run the numbers out, the total amount that they deposit is $25,200, okay? Mr. Wait Longer, at 25, he goes, hey, Rob, the time is not right. At 26, he goes, oh, I just had a baby. At 27, oh, I just bought a house. Oh, at 28, my kid needs this. There's never the right time. And so what happens is at 32, he says, okay, I'm going to start the same sort of plan. And you'll notice his contribution or her contribution is $61,200. This is all at the bottom of page 53. The one thing I want to point out is the total accumulation that they have. And so if you look at the bottom, they essentially have the same amount of money, $131,000, $128,000. So it says on the screen, how much more money did Mr. Wait Longer have to invest to get the same amount? The answer is $36,000. Okay, so it's costly to wait. I guess the moral of the story here is there's not a better time to start saving than now, even if it's only $10. And so again, I have so many people of years of giving these workshops and whatnot. And so many people, oh yeah, I promise you, Rob, I'm going to do that. 2-3 years goes by and they come in and they say, oh man, time is going by so fast. Wouldn't you know? It's because I haven't done anything. And so again, this is a really important thing for us to get across to people, especially for the younger people. We need to share this message with them, and it's very important for them to obviously receive that message. And so let's go on to the rule of 72. I know we talked about it in workshop 1. We briefly talked about the rule of 72 in workshop 1, and it says this is going to show you how to calculate the effect of what's called compound interest in a very simple manner. So let's revisit that, okay? 72 divided by your interest rate, also known as rate of return, equals the number of years for your money to double or your debt to double, again, if it's working against you. And so let's do some examples here. So on the screen, it says, for example, with 4%, 72 divided by 4 equals 18, representing it's going to take you about 18 years to double your money. So it's a really simple formula. And I know we have some examples to do. So let's go to our workbook, by the way, and some are in the workbook, some are not. The first one in the workbook, I'll help you if you have it. It says if you earn 2%, it's not on the screen, by the way, so bear with me for a second. If you earn 2%, 72 divided by 2 is 36. I know you may not love the math, but hang on here for a second. That means at 2% interest, your money doubles every 36 years. So this individual in the book with 10,000 at 29, 36 years later, how old are they? The answer is 65. And they have doubled to 20,000. We look at the screen now, someone earning 4%. 72 divided by 4, now the money doubles every 18 years. And so let's run this out. If this 29-year-old put it away, 18 years later, the 10,000 has doubled to 20. In 18 years after that, the 20,000 has doubled to 40. That's assuming a one-time deposit and that 4% just compounding year by year by year by year. The money doubles, much quicker than some people may think. So here's an example. Another example, I should say, a better example. It's in the workbook. It says 6%. So you may think it's only 2% more. Let's see the difference. 72 divided by 6, your money now doubles every 12 years. So you really shave down the doubling period. So check this out. The same person, the same amount of time. 41, they've got 20. 53, this is 12-year periods, they've got 40. And at 65, they've got 80. The difference between those two people is 100% more money with a 2% more return. So one thing I would ask you to take from this is 2% less on your money could potentially cut your investment in half. Are you maybe paying some fees? Are you not really aware of what's going on? So it's important to look at. Again, 8%, we'll just do all these out so you get the example. 72 divided by 8, your money doubles every 9 years. So now, 29-year-old with 10 grand. 9 years later, they're at 20. 9 years later at 47, 56, and 65. Look at the growth, you guys. And so it's really, really powerful to realize the effect of compound interest. One more example, 72. I'm sorry, not 72%, 10%. 72 divided by 10%, that means every 7.2 years. And so the same person with the same amount of money has $320,000. The moral of the story here is, because some people say, whoa, that's way too much math. The moral of the story is this. Do you know what you're earning on your investments? Do you know what you're earning on your savings? Do you know if you're earning 1% at your bank, it's going to take you 72 years to double that investment? It may not be enough time for you. You may not have that kind of time. So it's really important for us to recognize that, okay? Again, you're going to see the Rule 72 a lot with us. So let's talk more about it here as we go to the bottom of page 54. It says the difference between 6% interest and 10% interest at 65 is a $240,000 difference, is a substantial shortfall. What happens at 10% if I stop 7 years too soon or I start 7 years too late? Well, you're going to lose half the money, $160,000. So the time is very, very important. Again, what are you earning on your savings? I don't know. We put on here less than 1%. Maybe you're very fortunate, but more than likely people are earning less than 1% on their savings. And again, the effect of taxes. And so we look at these big numbers and we say, okay, that's great. What if I had the right investment? The attitude I would then ask you to shift to is, do you know how the taxes work? Do you know how the taxes are going to work on your 401k when you try to take that money out? Many of us haven't been really schooled on that. So we got to really think about the effect of taxes. And so let's look at the bottom of page 54 and do these multiple choice questions together if you've got a workbook. It says, if you put 100 grand into an account and in 9 years is guaranteed to double, what's your rate of interest? Well, let's think about it. 72 divided by what equals 9? The answer is D, 8%. So if 8%, your money will double every 9 years. If you ignore paying the balance on one of your credit cards and the interest rate is 18%, and how many years will it take before your debt doubles? Well, 72 divided by 18 the answer is 4 years for your debt to double. So it's a big thing. Let's just show you some numbers. It's not very current. We're waiting on our new workshop any day now, you guys. But as of a couple of years ago, just to give you perspective of essentially 100-year span, and that's why it doesn't matter that it's out of date, because it's really trying to give you a long-term glimpse. Small company stocks, large stocks, 12%, 10%. Because some people say, where do you get 10%? Well, I don't know. For 100 years in this country, even through recessions and all that stuff, they're averaging these numbers. And so government bonds, 5.5, treasury bills, 3.4, but you'll notice the bottom, 2.9%, the rate of inflation, the rising cost of living. And so it's important for us to realize that is working against us. I love this chart here because it shows a 20-year return up to 2018, and it shows what the average person has done. The stock market, what's called the S&P 500, has averaged 5.6%. So it's like, wow, it's a lot lower than some people thought it would be. Bonds, 4.3. The real estate people in the room, here's your truth, 3.4, nationwide average as of that span of time. You know, some people say real estate's going to beat everything. I don't know where they're looking. Maybe in San Jose, California, that's true, but not everywhere. The rate of inflation over that 20-year span, 2.2%. What do you think the average investor received? So if the market's up, all these other things are up, the average person should be up. Here's what the average person got, 1.9, less than the rate of inflation. And so again, that's one of the reasons we feel that the education is so important for people to get. And we have to then think, where is most of our money invested in? Is it taxable? Is it tax deferred? Or is it what's called tax advantaged? So people refer to it as tax now, tax later, tax never. Okay, we're going to talk about that. So let's again look at page 55. Let's talk about inflation just to give you some perspective. I know there's some examples in the workbook at the top of page 55 showing the rising cost of living. And here it is on the screen if you don't have a workbook and you're just following along. It says since 1958, the average inflation rate in this country, 3.7%. Okay. So the numbers are staggering when you look at the rate at how that affects, whoops, went too far, certain categories. You know, in 2019, it says the average new home in this country, $376,000. Well, people's income has not risen proportionately with that. If you look at the bottom where it shows wages of $46,000. And so we really feel like in reality, the middle class and the lower class are being squeezed right now more. And right now, especially with the pandemic and everything, maybe more than ever. And so again, inflation is going to become a real problem for us. So we've got to be very mindful what we do with our money and how we're spending our money. So it says, what will your $100 do in the next 20 years, assuming a 3% rate of inflation? Again, this is in the workbook, so you can see the numbers. So if you have $100, 5 years from now, it's only going to purchase $86 worth of items. You may notice this at the grocery store. I mean, a couple of years ago, I would go to the grocery store and I get a bunch of things, and now I get 2 or 3 bags, and they say, yeah, it's, you know, 50, $100. You're going to need $116 in 5 years at a 3% rate of inflation to buy the same amount of goods. This is why it's a problem to save money in the bank or under your mattress or something like that. 10 years, it gets even worse. $74 and you need $134 to equal it. 15 years, it gets even worse, you guys. So you look at the way that time passes us, it's like, oh man, you know, $100 isn't what it used to be. Well, obviously, my friend, and the reality is that's not going away anytime soon. And so we've got to do a better job of really making sure that our money is keeping up with the rate of inflation, because it says, how much would you need to retire in 20 years from today? Many of us think of what it costs to live today, but what the heck is it going to cost to live 20 years from now? So, you know, it's real. It's a real problem that we're all facing. Again, what's the cost of college tuition 20 years from today? Real problem. Okay. So let's do some examples to make sure this is all setting in with you. If you save $100, I think we're going to go to page 56. We'll do some examples. This one may not be in the book. We're going to jump around a little. You save $100, assuming you get 4% interest. This is not in the book. 4% interest. You say, oh, that's pretty good. I make $4. Let's assume your combined tax rate between your federal and state is you pay $1 in tax. That means you bring home 103 is the net. If you factor in the rate of inflation of 3%, your end result is you effectively don't make money. You break even at this example. This saying you must get at least 4 to beat taxes and inflation. Let's do the workbook. Page 56 at the top. It says if you save $100 and now you're getting 1%, maybe a little more realistic here, we're going to earn $1 of interest over the course of a year. Whoop-de-doo, man. I'm so excited. Your tax rate's probably a little bit lower here. We only pay 15 cents in tax. That leaves us $100.85. You factor in, remember, we learned the wealth formula because a lot of people don't factor this in their plan. We factor in the rate of inflation. Oh my God, that's $3 of purchasing power I lose. So I'm left with $97.85 of purchasing power after 1 year in the bank. How does that work for you? I don't know where you live or who you are, but I don't think that really works out that well. And that's what many people are facing right now. Exercise number 2, you save $100 and maybe you put it under your mattress. I have a pretty good mattress, you guys, a couple years old. I'm not going to lie. I really sleep really well, but my mattress doesn't pay me any interest. Maybe you have a fancy mattress, but mine pays me 0. So we're going to make that assumption that you make no interest under your mattress. Therefore, you also pay no tax on that $100 bill when you take it out from under that bed. Your net is 100, but again, you factor in inflation. It's not going to buy the same amount of stuff literally in 1 year, let alone 4, 5, 10 years. And so it becomes a problem. I think you get the message on that, okay? So it says, where do you put your money? Nothing in the world is more certain except for death and taxes. You know, we are going to pass away. You got to pay tax. It is what it is. We just need to learn the strategies of minimizing the tax. I can't minimize the death thing. I guess I can to some extent, but not so much. Think about it. You make money, they tax you. You get that paycheck, they tax you. You go spend money. You spend the money after it's been taxed at your job, they tax you again. Sales tax. You then save some money, you want to invest some money, they're going to tax you again. And then if you die and you don't have it set up properly, you could potentially pay more tax. And so the name of the game is we've got to educate ourselves to keep more money in our pockets for our families and our communities. So in the United States, there are 3 categories of taxes, what's called tax now, tax later, and tax advantaged. Some people refer to them as tax now, tax deferred, tax later, tax never, tax advantaged. Here's some examples of what they are. And I know you've probably seen some of this terminology before. Obviously, checking, saving, CDs. Yeah, of course we know those things. If you buy a stock and you make money, yeah, you got to pay tax on that right now. You can put it into a different category called tax later. Many of us know what's called a 401k, the very first thing on the line there. And I'm not saying it's good or bad, although most employers right now, they're cutting back those matches, the matching contribution, and many of these employees, they don't realize, oh man, they didn't tell you, you have to pay all the tax later in the future. And the people determining the taxes later in the future presently have about $25 trillion of debt. And this country is in a math problem. And so we really think people need to be mindful of the future of taxes. Again, and then tax advantaged, tax free if you do it properly. Again, we're not going to hit all of these, but we are going to talk about some of them as we go on. Again, today's the introduction to this stuff, okay? So on page 57, let's circle these items just so you can maybe get this in your mind, and I'll help you, okay? It says Roth IRA, that's tax advantaged. Individual stock, tax now. Annuity, tax later. A 401k, also tax later. Your checking account, that's tax now. The cash value of life insurance policies, that's actually tax advantage, tax never. Mutual funds, tax now. An IRA, which we're going to talk about in workshop 4, we're going to get into the mechanics, tax later. And then what's called a 529 college savings plan, tax advantaged. Okay, I know that might be a lot. So to make it simple, I'm going to ask you to get your coloring pens or markers out, and we're going to do some coloring here in the workbook. Literally, I would love you to shade this in. It says when saving, you want to consider the effect that tax is going to have on your income. Many of us are thinking about accumulating money, but a lot of us haven't thought about how do you get the money? Do they take a lot of tax? So tax now looks like this. You can draw through all those little triangles in the workbook, essentially all along the way, as you're profiting and realizing profit, you're going to pay what's called capital gains tax. Typically a low rate of tax, but you're going to pay it all along the way. Tax deferred, tax later, basically means we're going to pay nothing, we're going to pay nothing, and we're going to pay all of it in the end. Okay? That concept is from 1978, by the way, when the 401k was introduced by an individual named Ted Benna. You should look into a gentleman named Ted Benna because he recently wrote an article saying that the 401k no longer works because of the effect of taxation. So we've got to get educated. Again, I'm not saying dump your 401k, but just get some schooling, get some things in your mind, okay? Tax advantage, Roth IRA, cash accumulation of life insurance policies. You pay the tax up front and nothing in the end. The best example I can give you on this, imagine we were coming together, all of us on the call, and we were going to build a family farm. And we sat at the table tonight, and let's say I had a handful of seeds, and I said, guys, we're going to take these seeds, we're going to plant these seeds, and we're going to build a giant farm someday. And we have 2 choices. Choice A, we could pay tax today on the seeds. Choice B, we could pay tax later on the entire harvest. Which one do we do, you guys? We would have to think about that. So we really need to think about our money in a very similar fashion. Tax now, tax later, tax never. Again, very important for us to think about. Okay, so we did that, page 57. Let's go on. The incredible tax burden. Again, this is out of date. There is a website I would love you to go up to. There's a reference at the bottom of the screen if you can actually read that fine print. It's usdebtclock.org, because you can get more up-to-date numbers, mind-blowing numbers. The US debt is not 22.7 trillion, it's 25 trillion. So the burden per person is bigger. Here's why that's interesting of you. Some people say, I'm not worried about taxes, Rob. I'm not worried about it. I don't make a lot of money. I'm aware of that for a lot of people. But here's why it's going to affect you. Because in 1945, there was 40 people in the workforce for every one person collecting Social Security benefits. Today, that number is 3 to 1. And that creates a real math problem, because I've got a 16-ounce bottle of water here. I can't pour out 40 ounces. So there's a problem of less coming in and more going out, and the whole thing is starting to change, and that's putting a big burden on Social Security and the government, and obviously what's going on in the world right now. The present top federal tax bracket, 37%. If you live in the state of California, the top income tax bracket from a state level is 12.3, which includes an additional 1% surcharge for mental health for some of the people who are really need help. That means if you're a high income earner, you could potentially pay nearly 50% if you live in the state of California. It's hard to believe. And a lot of people are facing this. And so it's just becoming more of a problem as we look into the future. So when saving, you want to consider the effect that this is going to have on your income. So just some basic tips. Don't pay more than your fair share. Take an interest in paying less tax. The laws are allowing people and encouraging people to put money into IRAs, 401ks, things like this. Again, not saying they're bad, but they're encouraging you. At your job, how many things are on the menu other than a 401k? That's an interesting statement, because a lot of people, they say, oh, you know what? Yeah, they only offer me one plan. You got to ask yourself, why is that? Why are they only offering one plan? It doesn't make sense. As well as protection for your family, there's tax advantages of using some certain insurance policies we talked briefly about in workshop 2. Again, maxing out tax deductions allowing your home, your medical. You need to be getting as many tax deductions as you can, and maybe even have a business of your own. Again, I'm asking everybody in 2020, hey, what do you do for secondary income right now? Because everybody needs it. And so again, we really recommend to people to explore having some sort of business, whether it's a World Financial Group business or whatever sort of business that they want to partner with. Page 58 is one of my favorite slides of the workshop. If you remember nothing, try to remember this. It's great information. It's a concept called dollar cost averaging. And this is what it says. It basically says there's magic of being disciplined. There's magic of going to the gym when you don't feel like it. There's magic of not eating the piece of cake when you don't feel like it. There's magic of investing when the market and things are a little bit crazy. And we want to go through that. And the concept is what's called dollar cost averaging. And let's go to page 58 in the workbook, and I'll just read the top to you. It says Alex's mom loves him so much that she saves $100 a month for him. Assuming she uses a strategy, let's fill this out and see what it looks like. So we're going to go through an example of someone saving $100 a month and buying some sort of investment where the investment is going to not do so well and it's going to go down. And we want to look at that. So month number 1, we save $100. And let's say in that month, each investment we're buying is per unit, per share, $100. So we put in 100, they cost 100. That means we buy 1 share of, Coca-Cola or whatever, maybe stock this might be. Just an example, okay? We buy 1 share. The next month, she puts her $100 in, and there's not so good news. There's a pandemic and the stock market drops, and her investment goes down to $50. And she says, "What the heck, Rob? I just got in and it's down already." And I go, "I know, but this month when you put your 100 in, you buy 2. Not 1. You're buying more, so technically that's a good thing. So just hang on for the ride, because 2 months is not really enough time to measure anything. Month number 3, she puts her $100 in. She's looking for something positive, and unfortunately, it goes down to $25. She's down 75% from where she began. She buys 4 shares that month, but she's a little bit nervous. She's really, really nervous. She sends me some messages. She goes, I'm not really happy about this. And I say, just hang on a second here. Let's finish the exercise. Month 4, her $100 goes in, and we're praying. I'm praying for good news now. And oh my gosh, it goes down to 20. And my phone rings and she says, you know what, Rob? I Googled you and I found your home address there on Millennium Court in Tucson. And I'm not happy about this. My account is going down. And I say, Naomi, be patient here. Put your $100 in because now you buy 5 shares. Month 5 comes around. Her $100 goes in. I'm praying for something good. And it goes up a little bit to 25. She buys 4 that month. In month number 6, as we end the exercise, it goes back to 50 and she buys 2. And we stop the entire exercise. And so here's the first question I would ask you. Looking at that little, half moon shaped little curve there, if you looked from a distance at your investment and it started at 100 and ended at 50, would you be happy? And most people say, no, that's not what I want. Let's do the math, okay? Let's do the math. You put $600 in. If we average that out, it costs $45 per share. Remember, dollar cost averaging. It's a concept. We average it out. We've accumulated 18 of those shares over that period of time. And if we were to take those 18 shares and in the 6th month, we were to sell them at $50 a share, our 18 shares would net us $900. We put in 600. So my math, we've earned a 30% rate of interest, and the stock market or our investment went down 50%. People say, wow, that's pretty awesome. Because the idea is, you guys, when shoes are on sale, that's when you should buy them. When real estate is on sale, that's when you should buy them. But what most people do is, because they're emotional creatures and they back up their emotion with logic, very secondary use of logic, they say, oh man, the new iPhone came out. I'm going to go buy that tonight. That's a big mistake, because the smart people say, oh, I'm going to wait till it goes on sale. The point is, you guys, when things go down, that's an opportunity. When shoes go on sale, that's an opportunity. When the stock market goes down, it's an opportunity. And so this concept is really, really powerful for people with a plan where they're putting money in month by month by month. It's really, really awesome to learn, okay? Page 59. This is what's called asset allocation. I will pull this up on the screen in case you're writing so you can fill it in. But we're just going to look briefly at a thing called higher return, which means your rate of interest, the higher the risk. So they say the higher the risk, the higher the reward. So it's kind of like, okay, I don't like risk. So there's what's called asset allocation models. And there are 4 primary models that people refer to as what's called conservative, moderate or moderately conservative, moderate growth, and aggressive growth. And essentially, inside of these boxes, it just gives you a little breakdown where it's like, okay, if I'm investing in, let's say, my 401k, how the heck do I pick those investments in there? Well, we shouldn't even look at that. We should ask ourselves, are you an aggressive investor or are you a conservative investor? Do you want higher risk but higher returns, or lower risk with lower returns? And so this is one way that people can really help themselves by saying, you know what, maybe I'm investing a little bit too aggressive. It looks like everything I'm in is stocks. That may not be the right thing for you. And so this is just really something for you to learn. Again, this is something that, again, we can help you with. If you have a current plan, a 401k, an IRA, we can help you and say, oh, you know what, you're a little bit too aggressive and that's not good. Or like my friend Gabriel this morning, you're a little too conservative. You're not even on the chart because all your money is in the bank earning nothing. And so just important for us to understand. It says, as your life changes, your purpose changes. When you're younger, you might want to be willing to be more aggressive. And when you're older, you might want to be taking less risks. It's just really important. We don't want people who are, walking into retirement, losing all of their money in the stock market or something like that. This is a little slide. It's something we just like to show, and it shows a thing called rebalancing. So let's picture those circles from the previous screen. For example, the moderate says 50-50. I'm 50% stocks, 50% bonds. Here's what this current slide shows. This talks about a thing called rebalancing. And so imagine this, you guys, maybe you can see me on the screen. We're 50-50, we're 50-50. If the stock market is doing something, maybe dropping a lot or going up a lot, all of a sudden my 50-50 might be, well, 55% of my money is in stocks and 45% of it is in bonds, just because the stocks have really grown. And so what happens is, this slide here says, if you rebalance it, which means maybe it's once a month, once every few months, you keep it at that 50-50 allocation, the blue line is basically showing, yeah, over time, you'll actually make more money by staying in balance with your allocation. I know that may be a lot of jargon or information, but the point is, there are ways for this to be done for you really automatically. This shouldn't be something that you have to think about. Most 401ks and plans, they have this automatically. Again, we can show you and help you if you have a plan, get that set up. The bottom of page 59, it says, can you handle the loss? The stock market at one point this year was down 31%. I mean, it's just the fastest drop in history, worse than the Depression. I mean, it's really unbelievable. So check this out. If you lose 10%, and you make 10%, do you get even? The answer is no. You got to get 11 to get back even. You do the math. If I've got $100, if I lose 10%, I'm at 90. If I gain 10%, I'm at 99. Oh, that makes sense. What if I lose 20%? You got to make 25% to get even. What if you lose 30? 43. This gets ugly. What if you lose 40%? By the way, 2008 S&P 500 U.S. economy, negative 40% approximately. You got to make 67% just to get even. Not to make money, to get even. If you lose 50, you got to make 100. And if you lose 60, you got to make 150%. Here's why I like to share this. Stock market's crazy. There's a lot of risk out there. If you lose 30%, that means you will not get back to where you started until your investment gives you a 43% return. Somewhat unrealistic in a short period of time. So it's like really important for people to realize, can you handle the loss? Do you remember 2000? You remember 2008? And on our new workshop, it's going to say, do you remember 2020? Because now we're in that club of what's going on. And so again, a lot of people are losing money. So let's talk about on page 60, what is a mutual fund? Mutual fund, the word mutually funded. It's very simple. A mutual fund is a pool of money invested for you by an investment firm. It's a pool of money. There's all this money coming in together, separated by different accounts, obviously, and it's managed by a company. And what they do is they invest in a variety of different things like stocks, bonds, or government securities. They choose that for you, so you don't have to figure it out on your own. What happens is they hire someone to manage the money on your behalf. There's often a cost for that. So some people say, oh, okay, I need to be aware of the cost. The cost is okay, but what is the cost? Some of these are too high, so you need to be aware of what they are. And they potentially reduce the risk by what's called diversification. You may have heard, don't put all your eggs in one basket. If I put all of my money in, let's say, Google stock, what if that went out of business? Probably not likely, but what if that went out of business? You lose your money. So you need to put all your money and you need to diversify. So a mutual fund, they kind of do that for you because they're not putting all your money into one place, okay? So mutual funds can be an easy entry into the investing world because you do not need a lot of money. So a couple of bullet points here. By the way, this is not in the workbook. We'll just talk about it really quick. You don't need a lot of money. I used to think, oh man, people need a lot of money to do this. No, you guys. I mean, nowadays you can have $10, $20, $50. You can have an investment, okay? It's liquid, which means you can get in and out of the market. So, you should have an emergency fund. Some of your emergency fund should probably be in cash at your bank, but some of your emergency fund should be maybe in some sort of investment earning interest. So this is a good place to do it. They diversify, so the risk is spread out, again, by minimizing the loss. And again, the money is professionally managed. You have a professional managing those investments. You don't have your brother-in-law who's a truck driver. No offense to the truck driver, but you have someone who knows what they're doing. You wouldn't go to, if I'm an airplane mechanic, you wouldn't come to me for your heart procedure. It doesn't make sense. And so we really let those people do their job. It says mutual funds also have fees, expenses, and risks. which are explained in a document referred to as what's called a prospectus. Many of you who own an investment account or a 401k plan, probably once or twice a year, you might receive some document in the mail, black and white, really fine, almost like newspaper sort of print. That's typically what's called a prospectus. They are legally required to deliver that to you because buried in the middle of those 100 pages somewhere in this little print is showing the fees you pay. And so again, they kind of hide it. We can help, identify what that is and make sure you're not overpaying, okay? Page 60 here, it says emotional investing often leads to lower returns. And so this is basically showing someone who's emotional versus someone who's focused on their purpose. So think about it like this. You put your money in an investment, drops big time overnight, you get emotional. Oh, I don't like this. Get me out of that. Normally those people don't make any money. People who are purposeful, who say, oh, no, I understand. That's a temporary thing. Because a bet against the US economy is a bad bet. Even if we're in trouble, you guys, think about it. How many people in the world have an iPhone? Is that going to go away anytime soon? Those companies are US companies. And so all in the US, you got to realize there's strength in our economy, even at some of the worst times. And so it's important not to get too emotional with this stuff. And it says investors should find a fund that is suitable for your risk tolerance over the long term, rather than trying to what's called time the market, get in, buy this, sell that. That's not really smart for most people. Some people kind of get this antsy thing. They want to get rich overnight. It's not really real, okay? By the way, one thing I would like you to mark in your workbook where it says how you calculate net asset value, if you could strike a little line through that, we're going to skip that. We've removed that from the class, and we'll answer the bottom question here. Emotional investing most likely will lead to, the answer is lower returns, okay? Right on. Let's talk about active versus passive. We're at the tail end of this thing. So there's a difference in the two on page 61. So passive is what most people do, and it's what's called buy and hold. You put your money in your investment, you don't make any changes. It says this is for investors to manage risk by allocating your money into a broad array of asset classes and holding for a long period of time, regardless of what the market does. You buy it, you hold it, you ride it out. It's passive. You're not making a lot of changes. This is typically, again, you get to diversify your money. It's typically inexpensive and it's efficient from a tax perspective. You don't have a lot of transactions, so therefore your taxes, piece of cake, piece of cake. Active is a little bit different. Typically, you need to deal with somebody who has a different license. And this is a strategy where your account is continuously adjusted in response to the market. That's interesting. So let's think about it, you guys. Passive, I'm in a fund. The market is dropping. The fund is not going to do anything different. You're going to drop. It is what it is. Active, I'm in the active account. That manager thinks the economy is not so good. They may get you out of the train wreck before it happens. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. And they're doing it in response to the market. And it says, in theory, this has the ability to defend against the down market. Here's the flip side. You pay for that. There's typically higher costs. So, normally this is what wealthy people do. One thing I'm proud to be able to share with you is because of our platform and the education, we're able to connect people with literally $10 accounts and they can have this done. And so people now have the choice of how it works for them, okay? So the top of page 61, we're gonna fill in the active passive things. I'm just gonna help you get that filled in if you have a workbook. It says buy and hold strategy. That's passive, like we said. Holding assets in response to the market and economic conditions, that would be active. Holds assets for an extended period of time, passive. Holds assets regardless of the market, that's also passive. Generally has higher costs and fees, that would be active. In theory, defending against the down market, that is also active. And finally, generally has lower expenses and tax efficiency, that would be passive, okay? Pretty simple stuff. I know this may be your first time hearing it, so it could be a lot of jargon. Please don't let that intimidate you. Again, tonight is an introduction to some of the concepts. And so as we shift to the final subject here, it says preparing for the future. We save and grow our money to help prepare for some of the biggest investments of our lives. Our house, think about the preparation, your retirement, think about this. What about college for those kids? Some people, it's not so important. Some families, it's very important. So we need to look at college preparation and realize that there's two components of it. There's what's called funding and there's what's called planning. Most people focus on the funding, not necessarily the planning. And so we really want to point that out because it's becoming a really, really important thing to realize. And so the top of page 61 here, in the middle of the page, I should say, did you know how much it's going to cost to raise a child till the age of 18, not factoring in college? The answer for your workbook, $233,610. It's a little depressing, you know, and you think about the cost of tuition, it's a little bit crazy. And so let's check it out to fill this in. I know your workbook might say 2013, depending on your, you know, your revision of the book, do your best to fill that in because it says 2036 as well, rather than 2031. Public tuition, here's the numbers, in-state versus out-of-state, 36,000 versus 102,000, unreal in 2018. Private, 172,000. I mean, it's like mind-blowing numbers here. 4-year tuition. One thing I would like to remind you all on the call, those numbers are up approximately 700% in the past 25 years. It's like pathetic. College tuition's up 700%, but nobody's income is up 700%. That doesn't seem right. They're projecting those numbers for some depression here. If you need more, if you have a young child here in 18 years, you know, so staggering numbers, you guys. And so university debt has reached 1.6 trillion, surpassing credit cards and auto debts for the first time in history. And the average student is graduating with a diploma and $31,200 of student loan debts. So it is becoming a problem, you guys. Bottom of page 61, there's one question we'll fill in. Private tuition at tuition at a private university is 40 grand. Assuming 6% inflation, how much will it be in 2033? The answer is C, 120,000 is what I have in my workbook here. But let's go on as we wrap up talking about savings. So it says using a university savings calculator, if you have 18 years to save for a school, that cost $200,000. Again, if you send your kid to that school, good for you. It's a little bit crazy, but I want you to see these mind-blowing numbers of what needs to be saved on a monthly basis. So at an 8% return, someone has to save $433. 2% return, $750. So here's the point of this slide. And I'm not even so concerned if you write these numbers down or not. I just want to make an impression upon you of the cost of college is going through the roof and it's becoming out of reach for many, many families. And so it's important that we work on a strategy for people if they have kids. What do they want? Where will they save the money? Where will the money come from? So we just got to have a plan, okay? So page 62, let's talk about what's called the 529 plan. There is a very popular plan in this country called the 529, designed for college savings purposes, okay? Has some advantages, but some disadvantages, not so many disadvantages, but a couple, but let's look at them. So the earnings and withdrawals used to pay for college will be tax-free. So remember we said tax now, tax later, tax advantage. 529 is a tax advantage sort of product, not taxed if used for college education. And it says you, the donor, you stay in control of the account, which is different from what's called an UGMA account, which, you know, uniform gift for a minor. It's an older sort of college plan where the child would take control when they're 18. So imagine the child is 18, they get access to all the money. Doesn't really make a lot of sense. So 529, you, if you're the parent or the grandparent or whatever, you stay in control, not the kid. That's a big deal. It says contributions up to $15,000 per person per year. Wow, $28,000 for married couples filing jointly. Actually, I think that's $29,000. I believe that might be a typo, you guys, so bear with us on that. And it says, again, some disadvantages, but the point is, regardless of the exact accuracy of that number, because the IRS and the CARES Act, a lot has changed, there's a large limit is what we need to know. Okay. Disadvantages: contributions are not tax deductible. So what you put in there, you will not get to deduct that on your tax return. And if you take the money out, it's allowed, you can do it, but the earnings will be subject to income tax plus an additional 10% penalty, just like a 401k. So it's like, you broke the rules, here's a penalty, here's that tax. And a percentage of the assets, they will be counted against you on your FAFSA application. If you are filing for like federal free student aid because of your income level or whatnot, a portion of the 529 assets, they are used against you. So if all your money, is saved there, they may use that against you. Okay. There's what's called college funding, college aid formula. Just really quick, we'll fill in the workbook. Not super important to know. But what they have is what's called cost of attendance minus what's called the expected family contribution, which there's a formula that they calculate, and it's what's called needs-based funding. And so it says here, you should learn to reduce the what's called expected family contribution, thereby qualifying your children or your child for more needs-based money. So it's really strategies. It's positioning your assets. It's having a real financial plan in place where it's like, oh, you know what? I'm building my life. I'm saving for my future, whatever my goals are. And I'm doing it in a way that is going to benefit me and my family and my child for college purposes. And I'll tell you a quick story. I know a gentleman who makes $1 million a year, no exaggeration, who recently received a $90,000 scholarship for his daughter. And some people say, you know what, that's not right. And I'm here to say, well, define it's not right. Is it because he makes $1 million a year? Because I'll give you the example. It took him 3 years of work between him, his daughter, and a hired college coach to get that money. So they searched for years and years and years, and they got 90 grand. Most families, they don't really know how to do that. So again, the point is there's resources, and it's really about putting those together for the benefit of the family. And you may benefit, again, from a college planning program, which we do participate in that. So really, really awesome. How that works. Just to kind of introduce you to the idea, because a lot of people don't know. Think of the idea of a guidance counselor in a high school. It's almost a joke in today's society because it's like 40 students to one counselor, 100 students to one counselor. So we believe there's value in a college coach. Most parents are not prepared to determine the most effective, tax-efficient way to fund an education. And so, again, it's more than just the funding. So, again, we look at the idea that most parents do not have the time. They don't have the resources. They don't have the tools. They don't know if it's even the right school for the right career. So it's really important for us to think about that. Some people say, no, my kid is going to go to my alma mater. Well, that may not be the right school for that program. So you got to really put some thought to it, okay, as we go forward. So again, we really feel the right student can benefit with a coach in place, getting federal aid, grants, scholarships, things like that. Essentially getting people to go through college and minimizing those loans and those debts that people are coming out with. So we think it's a really, really big deal. So we have successfully made it with 5 minutes to spare to the end of workshop 3. I love workshop 3. It's basic, it's short, it's to the point. I know in the workbook there's a crossword puzzle. I do not care if you fill that in. I don't think there's a whole lot of value in that. What I would say is on page 65, there's probably a little bit more value. And it says complete the remaining sections. Again, there wasn't much for us to really fill in this section of the workbook. Again, we do recommend to get with the person that invited you. Again, I've offered myself, if you want to have a Zoom call or a one-on-one, whatever it is, I would love to help you with any of these ideas or answer questions, whatever it might be. And again, if you have a child or if you know of someone who's maybe got a child and they're starting to, get with somebody who can at least give you guidance. Get with somebody who has the answers for the stuff that you're looking for. And again, we feel like a lot of the college consultants that we've partnered with, which by the way, that program is a nationwide nonprofit organization. And so there's no pressure from these people, which is really, really awesome. If you have a copy of the Blue Saving Your Future book or the PDF book, or if you don't, let us know. We'll get this to you. We would ask you to read a couple of pages. It's not that much. It's going to tie a lot of what we talked about in together today. And as we come back next week for workshop 4, it is going to help us. So pages 6 to 21 and 51 to 68. And again, who are some people that could benefit? I don't know if you've ever seen the movie It's called Pay It Forward. It's an idea that this kid comes up with in like a high school or grade school thing, that he can change the world by helping a few people and having them just pay that forward. You know, if I can help my neighbors and they can go help their neighbors effectively, you can change the world if everybody were to do that. And we're not so naive to think that we're going to change the world in that sense overnight. However, I am aware if we continue to share, we continue to promote, we continue to talk and educate people, people are going to say, yeah, I would like to save for my kids' college. I would like to do these things. And so if there's people that you could think of that would benefit, please let us know. Again, these are all being recorded, and so they can be live streamed at any point on demand for people. And so if you have any questions on that stuff, definitely let us know. Maybe you introduce one person or invite them for the workshop next week. If not, no sweat. I am going to end my screen share here and come back to you guys. I hope you learned, one idea. I hope you took one nugget of information. I hope you took, something of value. Again, I know this is a subject that can be, especially if you're not in the best situation financially, it can be intimidating. Hopefully this simplifies some of the concepts. The rule of 72 is powerful. The wealth formula, it's powerful. Starting early is powerful. And guess when early is? Early could be today. You could say, you know what? Maybe I don't have a lot, but maybe I could save an extra $5 tonight and squeeze that into your savings, or do something productive, you guys, because a little step here and there, it makes a big difference. And so again, if you have any questions, let us know. Again, if you want to stick around for a few minutes on the webinar, feel free to unmute, ask questions. If not, God bless you. Good night. Stay safe, wash your hands, all that stuff. Hopefully the world's back to normal soon. Next Thursday, we'll have workshop 4, which is all about retirement and wealth preservation. Super important. We're going to get in the weeds a little bit. We're going to tie this all together. So anyway, you guys, God bless you. Have a good night. I'll stick around. Unmute if you have questions. If not, peace and love. We'll see you soon, okay? Thanks for your time. Thanks for attending.
Thank you.